The Story of Everything, Chapter 10, The Way. Within a split second, I could see Sophia clearly. The bright amber fog was rapidly receding in every direction. Huge, empty caverns were opening up, as if a sponge were being hollowed out from the inside. My jaw dropped as I looked up at the growing expanse of clear space eat away at the fog, leaving behind webs of fire that themselves soon evaporated. I moved us to 378,000 years anyway, Sophia explained. Nothing is disappearing. You're just seeing the photon-electron plasma clear out because it is now cool enough, 3,000 Kelvin to be exact, for the positively charged hydrogen, helium, and lithium nuclei to capture all the negatively charged electrons in the universe, allowing light to stream freely for the first time without being knocked around by electrons. I did this because we're going to need the space for your first lesson. I checked the time on my watch. It still said 13.8 GAGY1, like when we began this journey. Just then, a small cylinder flew out of my watch and morphed into a floating tic-tac-shaped droid with two big black eyes and two antennae on top. "Whoa," I exclaimed, "who's this?" "I'll let him introduce himself," Sophia replied. The robot made some cicada-like buzzing sounds while projecting holographic words between his antennae. The words said, "I'm Arrow." "Hi, Arrow," I replied. "It's nice to meet you." He responded with a holographic hand-waving emoji. "Arrow is here to help us on our journey," Sophia explained. "He likes to build things. Watch this." As soon as she said that, a hatch opened up in his belly and a little golden scroll emerged. The scroll fell at our feet, where it unfurled into a long golden road. As the road unfurled, a sea of soft, bright silver spread out from under it in every direction as far as the eye could see. Sophia made it so that I no longer felt like I was floating in empty space, but was now standing on this silvery metal at the threshold of the golden road. It felt good to be standing on something solid again. When the golden road was about a mile long, something appeared at the end of it, a thin, tall line like a glassy black skyscraper that shot up into the sky as high as I could see. She continued, "Welcome to the Via Sophia. You are Aleph, the first of a new generation of Enti." "A new generation," I mumbled as I tried to find the top of this knife in the sky. "Yes," Sophia said. "As the angel Gabriel told you, you are living in a global educational emergency, and it's up to Generation Alpha to turn things around. That's why I'm naming you Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the counterpart of Alpha, the first letter of the Greek alphabet. It's not a literal generation I speak of, because it doesn't matter what your real age is, or when or where you were born. What matters is that you're going on this journey of knowledge for the mother of the human race and for yourself. And so you represent a new generation arising from the ashes of a degenerate civilization." "And what is an NT?" I asked. She replied, ENTI, enti. I made it up. The Latin word for being is ens. Ens is the root word of entity, for example. If you're going to learn everything, you must know what knowledge is and what its branches are. But before you can do that, you must know what kind of thing knowledge is and where it fits within everything. But what is everything? The student of everything is first and always a student of being, because nothing can be known except what is. and all that is true, because truth is nothing other than conformity of the mind with what truly is and is not. Teachers and students of literally everything used to be called scholastics, named after the school, because they invented the world's first universities, and their system of study was called scholasticism. But because we're not just looking back to the past, but forward as well, I thought you'd like NT better. I do, I said. Good, then you are hereby enrolled in the NT Academy. While you are a student, you will be called an incipient, an NT incipient. And what is the Via Sophia? I asked. Via Sophia is Latin. It means way of wisdom. I would like Via Sophia better, I said, because you're my teacher and you're Sophia. Well, Sophia replied, the correct spelling in Latin would be Sophia, but sure, we can call it the Via Sophia. And why are we embarking on this journey? I asked. That's a very important question, she replied. It's not just to satisfy your curiosity. We're embarking on this journey because you were made for happiness, for fullness of being. And mere information is not going to get you to this ultimate goal. That's what the modern university has forgotten. And because you are human, and thus part of the material order, you don't start off as a perfect and complete being like angels. Rather, you journey from imperfection to perfection, just like every seed grows into a tree, and just like the universe itself started as a tiny speck of potential and is now unfolding into a more perfect form. And so you need a way, a path, along which you grow in wisdom and knowledge and training in virtue. It is this enlightenment, this strengthening, and this freeing of yourself from all that enslaves you that will get you to the ultimate happiness you were made for. Now, this wisdom I speak of is twofold. First, if you are to fully understand all that you see in the story of everything, including the Big Bang, you must learn the ways of the Philosophia Perennis. And what is that? The Philosophia Perennis is what gives an entity her intellectual power. It is the perennial philosophy, the philosophical truths that are forever true, the way addition and subtraction are forever true. It is the golden thread, the wisdom that is common in some way to the genius of all cultures, all peoples, all times, especially as articulated by the two greatest NT masters, Aristotle the philosopher and Thomas Aquinas the theologian. The Oxford English Dictionary defines it like this: a posited core of philosophical truths independent of and unaffected by time or place, frequently taken to be exemplified in the writings of Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas. I've never even heard of that, I replied. Like I said, you're living in an educational emergency, although there are a handful of universities and colleges that still teach it, and some that are just now rediscovering it. It proceeds like this. It begins with the highest, most universal truths common to all things, and then descends through the particular kinds of things that exist so that the student always studies a particular subject while keeping in mind its relation to the entire picture of everything. It's like studying the globe, continents, and oceans first, and then proceeding to countries, counties, cities, and neighborhoods, so that you always know where you are in relation to the whole. This approach helps students see that they are making progress in knowledge, that they're building and filling out a cathedral rather than learning random pointless trivia. We start off knowing being, which is to say everything, although in a very blurry and indefinite way. But as we go along, our picture of everything becomes sharper. This task of starting off with being as a whole and then classifying and ordering the different parts of being mirrors God's work in Genesis 1 of bringing order out of chaos by separating elements out and giving things an assigned place, which is also what happened in the Big Bang. I asked, is this philosophy more powerful than the Force? She said, you're referring to the magical power in Star Wars. Yes, it's far more powerful, but it's not the kind of power the powerful understand. I asked, why aren't we going to study these truths when we get to the time of Aristotle and Aquinas? Because you forced my hand, she replied. I suppose I did, although I'm not sure how. I had in mind more what the meaning of the imagery of the heavenly court was. You forced my hand because the meaning of the heavenly signs is intimately connected with the Philosophia Perennis and the Big Bang and the whole story of everything. We will indeed study the works of all the great NT masters from east to west when we arrive in their days, but because the truths of the Philosophia Perennis are independent of time and were discovered after much trial and error, and because these truths have a certain order and structure that were not discovered chronologically, it's better that we learn the essentials now, according to how they should begin to be learned. You see, there is truth that emerges historically, which is the main track we are following for your mother who wants to know how she came to exist and what happens to her human children. But there is another way of knowing truth that is just as important, and that is knowing truth systematically through an ordered structure that reflects the order of reality. And like chronological truth, it too has a beginning. I asked, then that's the twofold wisdom you speak of, historical and systematic? She replied, those are the two ways of knowing being. Together, they are the story of everything. There is history, which is the story part, and then there is the consideration of being and every kind of being that fills all of space and time, which is the of everything part. Those are the two main approaches to understanding all that is. The twofold wisdom I was speaking of is the way of reason and the way of faith. The Philosophia Perennis considers both paths. The way of reason is the summit of human intellectual achievement, built up by the natural light of human reason. The way of faith concerns revelation, which is wisdom that is above human capacity, wisdom that can only be given by God and received by humans, not discovered. And this is where you forced my hand. I was going to wait until these latter things were revealed to humankind before I revealed them to you. I replied, but then you showed me things only the angels have seen, and you said it's always best to start at the beginning, and these mysterious truths represented by the heavenly court were there at the beginning. Correct, Sophia replied. And so it's only fair that I show you what the angels knew, although they didn't know quite everything at this stage. So you will indeed have to wait for revelation to unfold in history before you learn most of it. That's okay, I said. I just want to know the meaning of the heavenly signs I saw. Well, she said, you'll get a little more than you bargained for already, even in considering the meaning of the images. But this will be advantageous because your first lessons, which will be along the way of faith, will illuminate the beginning of the way of reason, giving you a head start. I asked, aren't these two paths of wisdom in conflict with each other? By no means, she replied. If anything conflicts with reason, it must be rejected. Reason then assists faith by precluding what cannot be true and by training the mind for the attainment of things difficult to comprehend. The truths of faith, of divine revelation, are the most rational of all truths, but they are too bright for the unaided human mind, so the human mind must be given divine assistance. It is like ultraviolet light compared to visible light. Humans cannot see ultraviolet light, but this does not mean it's in conflict with visible light. It just means the frequency is too high for the unaided human eye. With some kind of technological aid, humans can see ultraviolet light. Likewise, the truths of faith are not counter to human reason. They are above human reason, because human reason is limited, whereas divine truth is infinite. And with the aid of faith, a power given by God, humans can attain things too high for their natural ability. And so faith and reason are in harmony with each other. As a wise NT Magister has said, faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of God. You keep making up words, I said. Magister? Let's just say that a magister is a fully trained NT master. I said, I want to be an NT magister. She replied, and you will be, and a saint too, if you follow the paths of faith and reason, which are really one path of wisdom, which is why I have called it the Via Sophia. I asked, is that what the yellow brick road is for? Yes, this road you see represents the golden thread of wisdom that in some way runs through all cultures and all ages. It is the Via Sophia, the Philosophia Perennis. And for this prelude to the first NT lesson, you will see that it runs from the deepest depths of wisdom to its highest peak, from the obscurity of pure potency to the blinding incomprehensibility of pure act. Here is the laborious journey from Thales' first drop of insight to Aristotle's flight into the Empyrean, and every similar journey ever taken in every age. Prelude, I asked, so this isn't even the first lesson? She replied, you have to earn that, except you can't possibly earn it, so I'm going to make it relatively easy for you. Wait, I asked, part of my mission is to become a saint? She replied, an NT strives to be a magister and a saint. Don't worry, it's not as daunting as it sounds. To be a saint is difficult, but to be a saint is in fact to have true freedom and to live life in its greatest abundance. I asked, and what is this silvery metal we're standing on? This metal felt soft under my feet, and it was brighter than silver. I reached down to touch it. It was oddly soft for metal. I forced my knuckles into it, which left permanent dents. That symbolizes all the lithium in the universe, Sophia explained. Ah, I said, but I thought there was only one lithium atom per every bazillion other atoms. She replied, about one lithium atom per every 10 billion other atoms. But you have to remember, the universe is incomprehensibly huge, even at this early stage, and it contains 10 to the 80 of those other atoms. And 1/10,000,000th of 10 to the 80 is 10 to the 70 lithium atoms. That's a lot of lithium. If you concentrate all that lithium into one place, you can make a lithium sea out of it. I replied, when you mentioned lithium before, I guess I just assumed it was a gas like hydrogen and helium. I didn't expect it to be a metal. Yes, she replied, the early universe was evenly sprinkled with just a touch of metal dust. I replied, "I wish you had taught my chemistry class." She said, "Now it's time to begin your pre-journey." "Okay," I said with enthusiasm, "here we go." I stepped onto the golden road and walked with confident purpose. But that confidence soon turned to dread as the black knife in the sky loomed ever larger. I sensed that a challenge was coming, one I was not at all suited for. This black monolith grew ever more intimidating as I drew closer. I still couldn't gauge its size or even really tell what it was until I was practically right up to it. I kept looking up, walking, looking up, walking, looking up. It seemed like a skyscraper, and skyscrapers fascinate me, but not if they're too tall. I'm deathly afraid of heights. This skyscraper was miles and miles high. When I could finally see the end of the golden road, I stopped looking up. One, because I was feeling sick, and two, because this seemed to be a dead end. I would need further instruction to continue. I looked at Sophia. "Go on," she motioned. I walked right up to the edge of the monolith. It was about 10 meters wide and who knows how tall. I reached out to touch the glass, which now looked deep blue rather than black. It felt cold and gelatinous. I looked at Sophia again. She nodded again. I pushed my hand through. It was water. Cold, thick water that seemed to squeeze the blood out of my hand till it was numb. My dread now intensified 1,000-fold as I realized that the golden path continued under the water. I could see just a few inches of it under the water before it faded into the deep blue murk. I wanted to know what this dark monolith was, so I walked to the left of it to see around the corner. It was not, in fact, a skyscraper, but a massive wall that seemed to have no top and no end. "What is this, Sophia?" She replied, "You've been witnessing the story of everything, and now you're about to go see everything." "But what is this thing?" "This," she said, "is a 10-meter wide slice of the Earth's crust, from the Challenger Deep to the top of Mount Everest." I knew where this was going. "Oh no, you don't actually expect me to go in there. Heck no." "Aleph, this is that scene in every movie where you have to be convinced to do the movie. Are you really going to make me go through all that?" I sighed a deep sigh and returned to the golden road. Sophia demanded an answer. "Are you going to be in the movie, or do we have to find another?" "I guess I'm going to be in the movie," I said. "I'll be following along outside with arrows," Sophia replied. I don't know if robots pray," I said, trying to procrastinate, "but maybe we should say a prayer first." "That's an excellent idea," Sophia replied, "because prayer is the mother and the beginning of the ascent." "Okay, but I don't know what to pray." "Then say with the psalmist, 'Teach me, O Lord, your ways, so that I may walk in your truth.'" After praying this, I felt the strength to begin my journey. I straightened out my hand vertically like a knife. Then I pushed it into the wall of Pacific water and then forced my body through into the cold, dense flood. Hello, fellow NT incipients. Well, we just took a bit of a wild left turn there, didn't we? Actually, not really. If you can remember way back to the very first episode, I promised that there would be something like Jedi lessons, which will be a few chapters here and there as we journey through the history of the universe. And if you're not up for that parallel journey, you can always skip ahead. But I strongly encourage you to give these lessons a try, at least through chapter 12. where we see the itinerary Sophia gives us for this journey through the Philosophia Perennis. I don't know if these lessons will continue past Volume 1. It's possible that if they do continue, they'll become a spin-off series with a life of their own. But the lessons that are given in Volume 1 are an integral part of this first book because they are about the biggest picture possible, which is appropriate for our survey of the history of the entire universe up to the appearance of humankind. These lessons help us understand the meaning of the Big Bang and the evolution of life on Earth. And without these lessons, that history is little more than a string of interesting facts. So I urge you to give the lessons a try, at least these first few. They culminate in a mountaintop crescendo at the end of the book that gives us a breathtaking view of the whole of reality. So if you're adventurous enough to give them a try, there's a huge payoff in store for you. You may not always know why we're diving into a particular topic at any one time, but when you get to the last chapters, you'll see how it all falls into place. For the small handful of you who are following along live, first of all, kudos to you. If this project ever takes off, you guys will be legends. You'll be like those people who bought the first Velvet Underground album. Second, I want to apologize to you that the recent episodes have taken so long to produce. It's because I need to do a bit of a rewrite of the next few chapters, so bear with me. Finally, I want to mention the artwork. This is really a book first and an audiobook second, but for YouTube and Substack and other platforms, it has pictures because, of course, this is a visual medium, and so I really recommend filling in the images with your own imagination. I can draw, although I'm a bit rusty at it because I haven't done it in a while. But because there's so much content in this book, I have to rely on AI to do most of it for me. And AI doesn't always capture what I actually have in mind. For example, it came up with a very different arrow droid than my own sketches suggest. What it came up with is cute, but maybe a little too cute. So think of the images you see as suggestions or impressions that open up your own imagination. These upcoming Philosophia Perennis lessons especially will require your own imagination. I'll only be able to provide impressionistic images that suggest a starting point for your own imagination. And if any of you are artists and would like to contribute fan artwork, subscribe over at Substack and talk to me, and I'll share with you chapters in advance that you can contribute to. And if you want to see episodes more frequently, subscribe over there. The link is below. That will allow me to spend more time creating these episodes. And if enough people subscribe, I'll be able to do something I really want to do, which is to have at least 10 or 20 numbered, signed first editions, hopefully with a unique cover, sent to the first subscribers and to a few random subscribers chosen by lottery so that everyone gets a chance at owning a unique copy of the book. I love collecting rare books, and I want to give everyone an opportunity to have something special, but I need your support to pull that off. All right, that's all for now. Enjoy the journey, everyone. There's some spectacular stuff coming up, I promise. Bye for now.